meeting to order at 7:10.
Did you text Peggy?
I did. I guess before we do that, we should close the other meeting. Can I have a
So moved.
second? We have ended the previous meeting, called the new meeting to order, 7:10. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
The only one would be 8.42 is in there, but the policy committee did not actually move that out. We're gonna have some more edits, so I wouldn't spend time. Okay, it's really not a first reading yet.
So I was gonna say fully removed.
C20, yeah, I think you can remove it tonight.
Anybody has read it and has comments?
Let-
Get in touch with the policy committee, which normally would be Rodney, but not anymore. So. All right, do we have any public comment? Okay, then we'll move to our consent agenda to approve the minutes of Tuesday, January 21st.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Another opportunity for public comments. And then an opportunity for board comments. Okay,
I do have a board comment.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to say it, but this is going to be you guys' last meeting.
that's true.
We're going to miss you.
But we'll be at the annual meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. We
We
can,
don't get voted out until next day.
okay.
There's still time to pay.
I have to
I was gonna say, Ronnie checked with me about this last night.
Well, either way, thank you, right?
Yeah. Either way, thank you guys. It's not going to be the same without you.
One thing I'll say for board comment that I probably should have had as an agenda item. I think that our district board should approach the other boards to float, having them designate us as their designated school for choice. So at this point, we're at 19.9 for our tuition, and Randolph is at 27,000. So,
27?
27. So between every student that comes to us instead of Randolph saves them $8,000. And that's not even counting some of the private schools that kids will go to. So if they designate us, and they can also designate, like Sharon Academy if they want to, or wherever else, wherever they go that's not one of the designated schools, the parents will receive our tuition amount to go to, and don't have to pay the extra. So that saves them an awful lot of money. And given I know the surrounding towns are all seeing tax increases, but we're not. So this is a good opportunity to bring that up and, give them something to have some control over their budget. Because I think the other thing that frustrates them is that with the tuition money, they really have no control over the high school amount. And if they have a school that's basically setting the floor for their tuition amount that's part of their SU, we could give them, a non-voting member who could come to the board meetings and discuss when we're setting tuition and other things. It would give them some measure of control over their local budgets, which they're doing. So, it's a little complicated because of potential changes in district governance, but this is a really prime opportunity to go to the other schools or districts and make this offer. And I think it would be a mutually beneficial thing for both groups. Of course, this is my last meeting, so it'll have to be somebody else who's bringing this forward, but I should have had that as a discussion item.
I'm sorry, we discussed that briefly and I lost it.
I didn't think about it. So I don't know what we would do on that front. I guess maybe the next meeting, you should have it as an agenda item and maybe make a formal approach. All right, anybody else for comments? Celebration of learning.
Tonight, your celebration of learning comes from White River Valley Middle School. What we'd like to celebrate tonight is what I think one of the best possible.
Is there a presentation?
very brief. What are the best possible outcomes for the education we give to students? If you think about our mission statement or any mission statement in general, one of the key factors is often we're trying to nurture and grow citizens who will contribute to community, contribute to an active life, both politically and in terms of giving back to their community. And where does that start? I think it starts with a child who's able to advocate for a change they see, to look at the community and say, I'm not comfortable with this, we could do better. So under that umbrella, I would like to call one student out by name, though many have had a role in it. At the end of the last year, a young student, Sophie Forrest, reached out to myself and a few others and said, hey, I see some things around the school we could do better as human beings, ranging from the language we use to talk to each other, student to student, how we handle responses to things falling under hazing, harassment, bullying. Also, how do we make bolder what we value here? So came at us with a lot of different ideas and the question, how can I help? What that grew into is, under the guidance of one of our teachers, Melissa Purdy, who works in both the elementary and the middle school campus, creation of something called the Culture and Climate Committee. What they focus on is both how can we influence the vision leading towards how they come before a board like this and advocate, this is what's important to us, please pay attention to, please consider, but also what are some tangible steps we can take now. What we have for you are a couple of artifacts to show you what this group is producing. Essentially carving out some time during the day where they give up their break and lunch, they break bread together every other week and determine what their mission is. What are the action steps we're going to take this week? And they started with, how do we get people on board? And the way they did that was by looking at representation from all of our advisories. There's at least one student from every single advisory that serve on this committee. If you don't mind playing the brief recruitment video they had, you were going to watch about a 1-minute video. This is something aimed at students, produced by students with some technical assistance.
The Culture and Climate Committee focuses on improving the school's culture and climate. We are working on making the school look better and have a more positive environment.
In the CCC, we have a representative from each advisory so there is equal representation.
These are our value flags that the advisories chose themselves. These value flags are used to represent what each advisory values and what we can all work on in the community together.
If you would like to join to help make our school a better place, please talk to Maria, Sophie, Cooper, Jude, Lily, Addie, Genevieve, Josie, Riley, Evelyn, Gretchen, August, Sadie, myself, or Miss Purdy and Dana.
If you have any ideas for us, please talk to Miss Purdy or Dana.
This is the CCC!
So the intended audience there was playing that in all of the advisories. In our advisory system, there's a unifying activity or video way to get the message out. And in the group, as I understand it, has grown slightly from that number you saw. But if you think about it as a percentage of our school, I mean, 10% of the students are on this committee. Those value flags that they showed briefly in that video, really we're diving deep into what each advisory wanted to focus on as this is what we're championing. You saw humor was one of them, so that they approached the next several days together with how can we bring humor into what we're talking about? How can we bring perseverance? Well, that looks like. So those flags led to conversations about what does this look like in our advisory? It led to conversations between advisories. The CCC includes members from, again, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade from every advisory plus some. And I did forget to mention Dana Decker does have a hand in that as well, not just Melissa Purdy. What I'd like to show next is a very brief slideshow. I think there's only 4 on the deck. Again, one of the other projects they're working on. One of the intentions behind the flag was get advisories thinking about what their values are and start buying into the work. This is a next level. So they have a poster project going around, and there's a slight bit of competition, advisory against advisory in a good-natured sense. It really is getting to their mission of how do we make this reflect that this is a positivity. Not campy positivity, but true, like genuine, humane treatment of each other. Go to the next one, please. So they had to come up with any other kind of project criteria. What are we looking for? What's the purpose? And what's coupled with this, I believe, are conversations in each advisory about what do we mean by a clear and positive message. So there's a level of vetting designed, again, to get people thinking now that we've come up with a value. What's the next step? How do we create a positive space? How do these things align? How does it reflect all of the other pieces we have going on at higher levels, from portrait of a learner to mission statement to this we believe kinds of conversations? I believe the next one's the last slide. So again, during our advisory time, time is given over to work on these posters and these various projects. I don't know who the winner is yet. I'm waiting with bated breath to find out which advisory wins, because we actually extended the date to, I believe, this Friday. Go ahead, Calvin, please. I think that's the end of that. So the where do we go next? This group came from a student saying, I want to have a hand in making a positive change. Once they found out they were not the only person with that ideal, with that goal, it's actually quite widespread. One of the benefits, turning perhaps a silent majority into a very vocal majority as to this we believe, this is how we act here, this is how we treat each other. I think it's one of those soft skills that leads to a positive climate change. And it's driven entirely by students. And it's not the only student group we have going on right now where we're finding that voice put into action. Quite exciting. We chose to focus on this one because I've highlighted student ambassadors in the past. What we expect is that their mission will continue to gain momentum, action steps, again, with the noble goal of how can we just treat each other more humanely? How can we be better as human beings within this? And the adults are feeding into that with, and this is what a citizen does. This is how you take an active hand in your community. This is how you advocate. There are a lot of life skills being thrown into this group as well. Any questions about our Culture and Climate Committee?
Sounds great.
That's good.
Sometimes the best things happening are the great ideas you get out of the way of and say, here, what do you need for support? We have a couple of really dedicated adults, a faculty that's bought into this idea, that's made space. Our music programs had to surrender some of their time as these groups have met. The faculty has had to be flexible with each other to make space for this to happen. So there are a lot of people on board. And then just this is the fruit that ripens on the vine planted down in the elementary. To give you some props on what your folks are doing, this is a direct evidence of kindness, of how to treat each other respectfully. PBIS or any other name you associate with, this is the next evolution of that, with the hope that what Jeff gets are some really quality advocating students continually.
Julie?
I was just going to say the same thing about it is parallel to the, is it called a kindness project, where there's a value for each month at the elementary school. So it's amazing that the kids have like taken that in and are doing it on their own. So that's awesome.
So some of the most direct evidence of learning, right? The old adage, see one, do one, teach one. Our students are now at the teach one. They're teaching each other what they've seen and done in earlier years.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's great. All right, superintendent report.
So you have my report in hand. There's a lot happening, both at the state level and federal level in regards to education. So it's there's a lot of information coming in at all of us pretty quickly. You know, one of the One of the things that I would add to my written report tonight, and I talked about the SU board meeting last night, is that in regards to education legislation, just universal meals is one of the things that very well may be used, those funds used to help prop up the ed fund this coming year. And so just know that that's something that was within the governor's budget address. And I know that, House Ways and Means has taken some testimony in regards to that. So just know that we're following that. Otherwise, you are going to take up the conversation tonight about whether or not you want to join the Rural Community School Alliance. Most of our district boards at this point have. The SU board did join that alliance last night in regards to providing some organization and common sharing of letter templates and things in regards to opposition to the governor's proposal. I just came from a meeting down in Sharon where Representative Holcomb indicated that they do believe that the governor is going to actually have a bill introduced this week in regards to his proposal. So at that point, maybe we can start to flesh out all of what is actually going to be proposed in regards to legislation. We also expect that at this point that the House Ed Committee may actually have a different version of a proposal that actually comes out of House Ed for consideration. One of the things I found interesting tonight is that at least Representative Holcomb, speaking for herself, but she is on House Ways and Means, is that House Ways and Means is very concerned about taking up an ed funding bill that's not clearly aligned to how changes in infrastructure in regards to district consolidation essentially would back up some of the big changes in regards to how some districts that are much higher spending than us may be impacted in regards to the foundation formula and the base student amount. So what I heard tonight was that, at least coming from her opinion, is that appropriations may not support specific changes to how we fund education without seeing what the rest of the plan is, which is the first I had heard that statement made, but that was made tonight in a public meeting. So stay tuned there. I was invited to testify Thursday at House Ed. I just have a bunch of other conflicting meetings. I think I'm going to be on the docket to testify next Thursday at House Ed, specific to our supervisory union, the mergers that occurred within the supervisory union, and specific to the success that we've seen in the White River Unified District merger. I will be certain to spell out that it's not just about merging, right? It's about having a vision. I think it's been about having opportunities in regards to how do we increase revenue flow into our district. I also think it's also about, if you look at our special ed spending as a supervisory union over the last number of years versus across the state, we've been able to build a lot of internal programming that goes back over a decade in regards to supporting kids in-house and not always having to rely on out-of-district placements or placements at independent schools. So the other thing I heard tonight that I thought was exciting is that I do believe House Ways and Means is going to start to ask questions like, what are the actual drivers in regards to education costs increasing so much across the state? Special ed cost, healthcare that's now bargain statewide cost, right? And, in regards to looking at, a lot of districts across the state put positions that they COVID-19 funded through ESSA funds into their local district budgets that were one-time funds. And you can look at district spending and see that occurred. Like, we worked really hard. We did introduce math interventions, but we worked really hard to budget for them over a 3-year period so that there wasn't all of a sudden this huge, we added a position and we're not ready to now be able to fund it. And so I think there's some interest in really diving into what are the driving costs for education And where's this $183 million of saving annually going to come from if you don't close schools? And then if you close schools, as an example, and you're looking at elementary schools of 450 students, that's in regards to the proposal, like even within RSU alone, like we have a building that can hold 450 students. Like 1 for 10. Right? And so then you think about, well, then where are our high school students going to go for a high school of 600? And you start to map out the state and you say that there could be a real infrastructure problem here. And so, you know, just know that those things are certainly, I'm trying to, you know, ask a lot of questions in regards to policymakers and just make certain that rural school voice is not lost. And oh, by the way, we just did a merger and we're starting to reap some benefits from it. And, you know, what is being proposed here is a district merger that goes from Sharon up to Craftsbury. But I'll entertain any other question folks may have. Lots of great things happening in your schools. I had the pleasure to be at the Royalton Elementary to do walkthroughs last Wednesday with the central office team and your principals, and really, really impressed in regards to just some of the growth that I'm seeing in regards to fidelity and implementation around instructional programming, and also in regards to just really common routines and expectations. Like the building felt really good down in that wing last Wednesday. And what I would say to you too, as I spoke to it in my board report, I'm really pleased what we're seeing in regards to our early primary grades around academic achievement data. We are analyzing data across the SU right now to see where are we seeing some of our upper elementary and middle schools demonstrating greater growth, and asking questions like, why is that? What have we implemented? What can we learn from each other in regards to instructional materials, but also professional development and things of that nature.
All right, thanks, Jamie. Do they have any questions or comments based on what Jamie was saying? Yeah, you know, I do think that we've done a really great job as a district at containing costs, and you know, a lot of that's your work with what you were talking about with the alternative programming and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it is a good example of a merger that works. But it's also, you know, like it took some time and some conflict, but like the towns were ultimately in control of it.
Right.
And like, you know, it was one of these things where we were given incentives and a carrot, and it led to good results. And, you know, like, I think that that's a much better approach than just saying, all you are together. You know,
And we have some models of that, frankly, within the supervisory union where some districts felt forced, and how much more growing pains we felt early on with decoupling votes and things of that nature.
Right.
Versus where two towns did do the research and came together and felt good about this is the way we're going to move forward, right? Like we weren't faced with a decoupling vote. Two of our other district mergers that I think folks felt was much more forced resulted in numerous decoupling votes.
Right. Yeah, and I would say, like, if we are able to entice some of the other boards to designate us, that's kind of another form of consolidation where we're kind of taking the SU and really bringing it together to work together further towards, you know, lowering costs overall.
Absolutely.
You know, it's another step that's not just making some giant district and closing schools, but would save some money.
With everything going on, do you anticipate any problems backfilling Annette roads to support student support services, or do you think that we're probably going to be all right?
Well, the hiring market's challenging in education.
Well, that's why I'm asking. There's a lot
I mean,
going
I
on.
would say I'm as concerned as I've been about filling an administrative position specific at the supervisory union level, because I think there's so much uncertainty right now that there's a lot of folks just feeling like, I'm gonna stay with what I know.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I do have some concern.
Okay, and to start, we're gonna start interviewing in March. That's like really close to the end of the year, and like May, June, if somebody hasn't made a decision, they might already made a different decision.
The good news is there's not lots of openings for that particular position right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, I will say to you, I think in regards to attracting candidates for admin positions, I do think that we're people want to come work for this organization. I think they know they have extremely supportive boards. I think that they feel really good about where we are in regards to fiscal sustainability. And I think we saw that recently with your principal search.
Yeah.
You know, the candidate pool for the high school principal position was one of the deepest admin pools we've had here since I've been superintendent. Like, you know, we had, you know, several candidates that have served in principal positions for fairly significant, you know, tenures. So that was a deep candidate pool. And so, you know, my hope is that we may attract some folks like we did there that I wouldn't have known that would have applied for us, frankly, for the high school position, that had current positions and things of that nature that we didn't have prior connections to or anything, but they sought out a position here. So
Cool.
All right, unless there's anything else, we'll move to the principal's report.
So we have an academic data report and a principal's report. I feel like we stole a little bit of our thunder because you highlighted our academic data in the budget. And Jamie also stole a little bit of the thunder. But so I'll just say quickly, you should take the time to look at the color copy. There's a couple copies up here if you need a copy. And the part that I like to see the most is our well below expected is shrinking, and the below expected categories are shrinking. So the big general takeaway for elementary is that math, 65% of our students are meeting or exceeding the expectations in math. And in literacy, it's 55% are meeting, exceeding. And I think we're just really rocking in math. And I think we're seeing like a direct correlation between the amount of work we're putting in teacher training and math and the new math program. So the well below that we started with at the beginning of the year decreased by half in the math and by a third in literacy. So huge gains, and we're going to keep on learning and trucking with kids. But I would take time to like dig into it a little bit deeper. And I think what we tried to do, you have to read the detail, is look at the grade, and it goes across, but it's the year they started. So if you're looking at the kindergarten and you track across, it's the kindergartners in first grade and their scores. It just doesn't, if you don't actually read the detail, it's going to be confusing. I'm going to keep talking unless people want to.
yeah, because it's an aerial growth from winter to winter. So your CK, that's actually
This year's first year.
This year's first grade, where they performed in K, and then where are they performing now?
Correct.
So did you want to talk about these reports now, or did you want to?
I was just going to say that and then launch into my piece unless you want us to just dive into this report. You tell me how you want to go.
What do you guys think?
Because these two are ready and queued up to talk more about their data.
Why don't we do the regular principal report and then we'll do this.
All right, so I'm going to keep on going. So there's a lot in our principal's report, and I hope that you have a second to actually dig in and look at it. Our initial section is always about our in-service and classes that are being taken, that teachers are doing. I think I highlighted in the first section, though, that we were honored by and recognized by Secretary Saunders at both elementary campuses for our impressive efforts of our school staff to support students and families and caregivers by maintaining our PBIS implementation. So those letters from her are linked there if you have it digitally. The other part I will highlight that I think I'm very excited for our staff is that we were accepted by the state to participate in the Vermont Read AOV Literacy Coaching Initiative. So 11 teachers right now and the beginning of next year will be in this 18-month coaching and learning cycle with the state. We already started. There's workshops, there's coaching meetings. There's just a lot of education for teachers. I know I just participated in one on explicit vocabulary instruction, and I'm just really happy that our state is giving this to teachers, and it's really accessible from your computer screen. So it feels really rich and put on by the Stern Center, who we have a nice relationship with already. So thankful that we were picked by them to participate in that, and also thankful that we have so many teachers who have jumped in who want to participate. And then the last thing, actually a couple more things. The biggest thing I want to highlight is that our community conversation is going to be coming up. The elementary is putting on one on social media 101 and digital wellness. We're doing that in conjunction with South Royalton Health Center. We have a speaker who's coming from the Boston area to do the social media 101 part. So I think it's going to be really wonderful to have her here as a resource. So that's Cassie Kearney. And then we're also partnering with the director of the Special Investigations Unit and Child Advocacy Center, Julie Gaudette. She's going to be coming and giving the lens of like, what does Vermont law say about digital phones and use and what could happen, worst case scenarios, and things like that. So March 18th, and we have a snow date of the 19th. We're going to be giving dinner. There's going to be a lot of partners there just to be supportive. We hope that people come out. We're also going to be recording it and hopefully live streaming it. So it'll be very accessible, and we hope everyone comes. And we might be putting it on the Bethel campus. That's a small little detail that we're working out. Not in here, but I'm excited. Tomorrow is our yearly spelling bee. Script spelling bee will be happening on both campuses. It's a whirlwind day for Mr. Canardi, who clears his schedule so that he can be a pronouncer.
I wasn't invited.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, so you're welcome to come to see our kids participate in that. And last but not least, Grant Bucky Isham passed away. He was the elementary principal and librarian and teacher and coach in Bethel from 1955 to 1992. He worked for our school with like a small 2-year break in the middle. But as part of his passing, the family asked that donations be made to the Bethel Library. So it's very generous, and so the Bethel Library is getting a lot of donations in his honor. So I just wanted to say that it was really sweet of their family, who we have obviously a long-standing connection with, and we're just thankful for them to think of us in his passing. That's my 2 cents.
The last bullet point stuff to follow. Right?
Sorry.
You don't apologize. As a complete aside, it was heartwarming to see just how quickly folks in my school and in the community were gathering together. How can we celebrate this? How can we give space for it? I don't pretend to have known the person, but I know there's a library named after him in our campus. And
he was a very lovely man, and always made a point to come over to me and tell me what a good job I was doing. Even though I'm not sure if he really did or didn't know what a good job I was doing.
it's reflective of how much people care and invest. So following that, up in the middle school, a couple of things I'd like to highlight. Last month, I talked to you about, with anticipation, a growing relationship we all are benefiting from with outside agencies, Health Hub, primary care physicians, Clara Martin. I'd like to report what that looks like now. We've had several coordinated service plan meetings that, with these various providers at the table, we're getting families to the table and coming up with options and solutions that we hadn't thought of before or hadn't offered before or now have support to give. I think it's going to directly impact, first off, families feeling that they're part of our community and that there's always a path back to learning, and that there's more than just the school sitting there at a big meeting, and school isn't something that's done to them, it's done for them. And they have all kinds of advocates at the table. And so that's a really powerful fruit of that relationship that's growing. CSPs, if you're not familiar with that kind of a meeting, they're intensive, they take a lot of time to prepare for, a lot of time invested, and having those community agencies work with us diligently has made that process a lot smoother. And has fast forwarded some conversations that felt like, okay, how do we move forward? So really appreciating that relationship. Again, sometimes the benefit of a really large, as in multiple school district, is cross-pollination of ideas. I've mentioned before, my partners here, but I'd like to give a shout out to Keenan Haley and his crew over in Sharon. And a thanks to Kate Mayer, my right hand, my student support coordinator. She went and observed Keenan School and a project they have going on there called the Impossible Shot. Colonel, for you to take away is a genuine, authentic student recognition system that feels far more age appropriate for middle schoolers, focusing on a task that anyone can or cannot complete, recognizing, again, things aligned with our values and what we're looking for in a good scenario. Long story short, the incentives we're using are going to be far more experience based. That's what we're pushing forward. And we rolled that out at a community meeting in the middle school just a couple weeks ago. Something else I'd like to highlight is continuing that investment in the makerspace. You've given us an amazing set of tools. Now what do we do with them? Well, we're continuing to build capacity within our teachers. We have several that are participating in trainings offered, free trainings offered by our partner Generator in Burlington. And I want to acknowledge that comes with a cost. To get a teacher freed up for a day of training requires flexibility, especially since so many of our shared staff are interested in this learning experience. So whole team pulls together, we cover where we need, we get people trained up, and we build capacity for how to use all of this equipment and tie it back to learning. And it's not one quote unquote type of teacher that's engaging in this. We have a variety of teachers, art, English, outdoor ed, a variety of people that are looking to use these resources you've given us. And I'll stop there.
All right. So recently we had a person come in named Fletcher Cleaves for Choices Matter. He was in a car accident, and during that accident, he was hit by somebody that was texting, and that person never stopped. He swerved to avoid the accident and was paralyzed. And so he spoke to the students about choices and the choices you make. One of the neat things he did was he had students called up and they had to write with their left hand and right hand at the same time. This the point is you can't do two things at once. It was kind of interesting. And they had some goggles on, and kids had to walk a straight line. They had some video games that kids could play. It was sponsored by the VPA. And it was, I don't know, I was so impressed with our students, how they just like walked in, and it was like the comments I heard from like 3 of the people that were with him was that this is the best school we've ever been to. Like, these kids are so awesome, and they were going on. So that's a really good feeling for our community. Another thing that we're celebrated was our cancer awareness basketball games. We do that every year. This year we made a grand total of over $6,000, and that's the most, I think. And a lot of credit goes to our activities director, Amy Parker, who also went and put a thing online that you could sponsor money to the cause as well. So that was the most money we've raised in my 3 years here. Recently, we also went on our winter outings, and that was really fun. Hannah, who's not here tonight, caught her first fish through the ice. It was kind of a neat situation. She came over, I was cleaning out one of the holes, and she came over and says, "Yeah, Mr. Tom, I really don't know how to do this." I said, "Well, when a flag comes up," and I was explaining what happened, and sure enough, the flag next to us went up. Like, you can't make that up. And she ended up catching her first bass, so that's kind of a neat situation. Kids went skiing. We went to rock climbing and skating. It was just a great day. It was a little windy and cold, but there's no such thing as cold weather in Vermont, just poor clothing. So our kids were well prepared.
You should come work in the middle school.
Yeah. So a couple other highlights I want to mention is that we've had a couple students, we've been trying to meet them where they're at, and they just haven't really moved forward in high school. And we know it's a credit game. You got to get credits if they're going to move forward. And we visited Raven, which is like a program for students that is like a vocational program. They work on cars. They have a lift in there. They have like 6 welding machines and whatnot, and you come in and you can work on your own projects. And so I took these 3 students, and when they left, the energy that they brought on the ride back to campus was unbelievable. They finally found something that they really hooked into. We have one other student that goes there, and he's a different kid in school because he catches a bus in the morning, And he's walking around smiling, he's got a little swag to him, and he's just a different person. It's really exciting to see when you find something that really matches a student, how exciting they can be about education, so that's exciting. And we had our first graduate, Jackson Berry, just recently graduated, so that was kind of an exciting thing. And that's kind of the highlights in my report. I can talk about our data, high school data, and I'll go right into that. So as you can see in math, 70% of our high school students atypical or aggressive growth, and in English it was 59%. I want to talk a little bit about why there's so much growth. I think one is the importance of the assessment and fast bridge assessment and what we talk about with our students. You know, some of the students, when they were into a certain class and they didn't feel like they belonged in that level class, and they're like, so why am I in, pre-algebra? I should be in algebra. We're like, well, how'd you do on your assessment? So we're using that tool to actually put kids where they're supposed to be. So they're like, oh, you may have to take that serious. And so that was one of the things I think that really changed. Another couple programs that we started was Language Live and Transitional Math. And it's those lagging skills that some of our students have that sometimes you put them into a regular class and they just can't catch up on those skills. And in math, sometimes it's as simple as like, I just didn't know how to multiply. And then you can work on that skill, and then all of a sudden the other skills come easier. And so with these two programs, I think that's one of the reasons you've seen that growth over the fall to winter. And I want to thank Mr. Shane Oakes today. We had a faculty meeting that he ran, and every 3 weeks now, he's running a data team, and the whole staff's involved with reading this data. And it was just really great to see that all this interest in our staff, and Shane did a great job of presenting.
Turning to the middle school report, it is encouraging that we've seen growth in all of our cohorts, progress. Some things to point out. In terms of mathematics, we decreased the number of students falling well below expectations by about a quarter. And looking at English Language Arts, ELA, we saw significant growth in areas we weren't typically expecting, our current 8th grade. We too are using FastBridge as one of the assessment tools at our fingertips. We just started using it, ran it for the first time in this particular reporting session, so we look forward to those results in the spring. But what it has given us is a finer microscope lens to look at what are the foundational skills. Jeff mentioned that by digging down into what is that missing piece, not only do we see where a student is strong, but also where a cohort might be lagging. We're talking about differentiating down to skills that are required for probability and statistics versus simple number order recognition. We've been using that to target some interventions and the conversations from that. How do we continue with that? Things that attribute, I think, to the growth we're seeing, aside from quality teachers, is a focus going into this year to provide some kind of scripted educational components, some fidelity to programs. In other words, our interventionist, if you recall last year, we moved that from a para position to a full-time teaching position. That person's sole focus is looking at math intervention. Let's have that position in our ELA as well. One of the things we did mindfully this year is change some patterns about how those people are used. For example, they used to be fairly high up on the emergency sub list. We need a classroom covered. We have an interventionist step in. We've done that in exceedingly rare situations this year, less than a half dozen. Whereas last year we might have done that 25 times to an interventionist. We went into the school year saying our priority is ensuring that there's fidelity of interventions, and given that the student is there, we're going to carry them out. I think that's been definitely a factor in timely application of that intervention, monitoring that student's progress, and targeting some very foundational skills. Overall, what's not reflected in here are the conversations behind this generalized data, and that again is as we're adding more and more tools to our district as to how to work with data, how to see the entire cohort or students' entire panoply of different assessments, you are able to pick at those fine details. And that's an evolution from my continual evolution. Every year we're trying to add another tool, another lens, another way to look at what's the missing skill that we target, and also recognizing where students are quite strong. maybe general kinds of conversational points of, we haven't taught that yet, and yet it's assessed on a benchmark. When are we dedicating time to that? How are we structuring, pacing, things like that? I'll leave it there.
Okay, does anybody have anything on the general principles reports that they want to follow up on, or should we dive into the data? Okay. Sounds like we can dive into the data. Does anybody have anything they want to say on the data report? So on the general format of the report, I did find it a little difficult, like having all the bars together where you have the fall and then the winter and then the next grade and then the winter. It kind of makes it difficult to, like, you kind of have to really take your time to look at it. I'm not sure.
That would be an on the comment.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure how best to do it. It's probably hard to do it. Anyway. I am a little concerned with the elementary one, just in that when you look at grade K, like the winter 2024 one, which is the first grade one, compare that to the previous years, so the grade one, it's the, the right column to the next line down, left column. Seems like most of them are below what the previous years was, which would indicate kind of a downward slope. Is that accurate, or is there a reason those would be like that?
I mean, I think they are, if you wanted to compare them that way, I don't know if I would look at it this way. I think, generally speaking, my takeaway is that we have, I think our K-1 looks really good, and it's a celebration of, like, math seems solid K-1. Like that more kids are meeting the standard than not.
Yeah.
And I think looking at, like, from fall into winter, those kindergartners made a huge amount of progress from where they came in.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those look really promising.
It's always hard to compare, like, cohort to cohort.
Right.
Especially, yeah.
But it's also hard, like, I know the fall and the winter expectations are adjusted based on what they should be learning. So we're going above what the expected is, but it's also useful to see that kind of year over year change. And clearly we want to see it doing this positive trend from the fall to the winter. I have to go back and look to see how previous falls to previous winters compared, like whether this is kind of a testing artifact versus a true trend that we're seeing,
Yeah.
And so that's where the kind of cohort to cohort comparison was a little worrisome, in that pretty much every one that we can compare on the sheet was lower than the previous cohort, which is kind of different than what I would have expected, because I feel like our lower grades have been strong. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so you would think that would show up as the lower grades continuing that strength into the upper grades, kind of being above the previous cohort. But that's not really what I'm seeing here. So I'm curious about that.
So, for example, second grade, so that grade 2, winter 24-25 shows a 733 currently. And the grade 3, that, like, when that grade 3 were in second grade, they scored a 732.
Where are we looking now? Oh, are we math or?
I was looking at math, sorry. Are you talking about ELA? Is that your concern?
Shoot, it has been. I happen to have the ELA one. Oh, it's on the backside of this one. Okay. Yeah, so in that case, like the grade 3 cohort from last year to this year's cohort, basically they're
Correct. Yeah. I was looking at math, so I wasn't following your question. I had turned to
so
the
ELA, like they're all consistently lower. Math, there are a few that are basically even, and a couple. So, in general, the elementary data does look pretty good. Like you want to see the blue bars basically at that 50% or higher, and so that's great. And I feel like in the past we've kind of seen something where our kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, to like we kind of see a drop off somewhere around third or fourth grade. It seems like that's not the case this time as dramatically.
I would say not as dramatic, but I think our ELA data in general is stagnant when we get there, which is part of the reason that we're looking to use EL as our program to increase some rigor in regards to those grades. I mean, I think we're doing a good job in regards to addressing foundational skills at those primary grades now. I think EL is going to do a really good job to say, all right, you can now decode and encode in third grade. Like you can read to learn. Like how are we really taking those skills now and applying that at a deeper level around close reading, nonfiction text, like, and getting kids engaged in like why they're reading. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think our students, like they want, like we need to create a love of reading. Like I don't see that. One of the concerns I have is like, I don't see as much practice in regards to that as like at home, right? Like I think our families are getting way busier. I think a lot of our kids, even at home, like their readings on this, like how do we create and foster this love of reading in regards to text that's meaningful? Another gap that I think we were really looking to address in upper elementary levels is a really common approach in regards to scaffolding writing instruction, which the EL program will have for us. I would say if you said to us right now, what's your concerns in regards to our literacy programming? I feel really good about where I think we are in regards to foundational skills, the primary grades and the science of reading. I think we have some gaps in regards to upper elementary and middle school. I think your ELA data actually shows that to you. Like we're incredibly flat.
Yeah.
And, I have some districts now where I could, if you said to me, like, how are some other districts performing that have utilized EL? I've got a middle school at 7th and 8th grade at First Branch that are performing above 60% in ELA. And this is the second year that teacher being able to implement that program. So, we're really trying to tease out our data across the SU to see, before we just make a shift across the whole SU in regards to leveraging instructional program, saying, let's use it with fidelity. Let's see if we're seeing the gains that we want to see made. Then if that makes sense, get teachers together to talk it through and then say, all right, this is where we're going. Instead of doing across the board change, because we don't want to make the wrong one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I do think that we've got some good data now over a couple of years of seeing some real growth at that upper elementary, middle school. We've piloted this, that's why we're looking to go across the board with it.
I guess my other comment, again, looking just at where the blue bar is relative kind of that where we'd like it to be. This is probably related to what you were just talking about, but we kind of middle school level is generally below where we want to be. Yeah, and I guess if that is just what you were just talking about. I was wondering if there's something in the transition to middle school we could be doing better as well, or kind of the instruction at that level.
Well, I mean, I think, and I don't want to speak for Pierre, but Pierre, feel free to say I think it's, I actually think there, in our community data says we got to continue to strengthen our transitional planning. I would say, I think the investment that the middle school teams really put in regards to strengthening their social emotional system, I think that we're showing much improved data in regards to student expectations, behavior, social, emotional. So that I think now we can really address these gaps that we have instructionally. But yes, I mean, we have not really gone with a uniformed approach around literacy instruction at the middle school. Here, but really across the SU, other than piloting this in a couple of our other middle school classrooms. So yes, my hope is that that instructional tool is going to really help. Our teachers, and one of the reasons we're choosing EL, if you do, go to in research as an instructional program, it builds in a lot of differentiation within the program. Meaning it provides scaffolding for kids who are still struggling with sentence structure and paragraph writing. And it really can push a student in regards to achieving at or above grade level. And it's built in regards to those units so that we're not asking teachers to have to create how they're going to differentiate when they may have in front of them students that are 3 grade levels different, especially at the middle school. That differentiation is built in.
I had just 2 points to that. Think about, I'll give you an example of a conversation I had with Erwin on this campus. We were talking at length about how he's approaching the teaching how to write, how to construct the thesis, the supporting evidence, how do you construct an essay or a persuasive piece. The skills he's talking about trickle down to where that's broken down in the foundational skill. Couple that with another thought that in middle school, and we're seeing this in the upper elementary as well, as things become more specialized. Now we're talking science. Now we're talking specifically about X, Y, Z. If you're missing a foundational gap and you're getting deeper and deeper into the beyond just reading for learning, but reading for understanding, and that reading through the lens of someone in that field. In other words, I'm reading a science article, I understand the gist, I'm thinking about ecology. If the foundational skill is gapped there, you're going to see that divide widen even more. So what Jamie is talking about, having a program a system that is not only looking at where those foundational gaps are, but a program that scaffolds that so that all the learners are moving along and making progress, I think you're going to see dividends from that. And also, I guess a third point, one of the things I very much appreciated about my first summer when I first came aboard, and we're repeating, is getting our ELA and our global citizen teachers together to talk about, okay, how are we using a text? How are we using a mentor text to guide students into the concepts of this deeper conversation? Like before we read Animal Farm, we're reading Here's a Who, or Turtle to Turtle to talk about hierarchical structures. Those kinds of conversations are growing. I think that led to a more integrated curriculum between those 4 teachers. By having, again, another program that is boosting up foundational skills at the same time differentiating for students, you're just going to see that. I anticipate these numbers will continue to go up, and we'll be just talking about progress, but celebrating what you're looking for. Those blue bars going higher and higher past that 50% mark.
Good. I think I've mentioned this before, but one thing I'd be curious to know is, you kind of have these progress rates or growth scores, which are useful to look at. I'd be curious to know kind of the progress rates, instead of broken up, I mean, probably can do this by grade, but by just for like K to 5, like what are the progress rates for the people in the green versus progress rates for the people in the red?
I appreciate that question. One of the kind of key factors of conversations we're having, especially in the last few months, but they've been ongoing, is you can use data to look at just the red. Where are students struggling the most? And you can start backfilling or teaching to those foundational skills, but you can't fail to look at all students. Someone that might be measuring in the blue, they're still making progress. So it's looking at each student. One of the reasons why data teams break down to much smaller units, so that we're not missing them. If you think about someone that has a drop off but is still appearing that they're in expected progress, that could easily slip through the cracks without asking the question, what are you doing for that student? For any student.
Yeah, that's great.
So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, so, I think that would be useful to have, like, our job is to kind of just look at this and see how things are going, to see, assess whatever investments we're doing and whatnot. So it'd be useful to kind of see that, to know how.
Would it be helpful then, if you consider something I did off the cuff when we were discussing our SEL report, I showed you essentially a case study. Here's data, applied an intervention, here's that progress we saw. Would it be helpful to look at snapshots from a variety of these kinds of students without names, without identifying information, so you can see the kinds of conversations we're having on our levels? So kind of a quality control sampling.
And then on the high school one, I just, so the gray bar is the national mean, and then our average score is the blue bar. So we're above the mean in reading, but below the mean in math. Am I reading that right? It's a little confusing having both on the same.
Right.
Kind of different scales, but I guess it's fixed. Yeah, I don't have anything in particular. I think everything. Anybody have anything else on data before we move on? Oh, Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd still be curious. I think I brought this up before, but don't know how easy it is to see this data compared to like report card monitoring data, because especially like I know in 6th grade math, they're being tested on things that they haven't even been taught yet, but I'd be very curious to see the progress or just a general overview of just report cards for each cohort to see how many are, I don't know what kind of scale exactly you use, but in comparison to these one-off tests, just to see the difference.
That's a good point.
All right, when you say report card data, like those demonstrate proficiency in certain indicators?
Yeah, I think I just mean like the maybe report card data isn't the best measure, but things that kids have been taught in class and are measured on, and not like a test where they're tested on things that they haven't been taught yet. So are they responding to direct instruction versus a test like this that they're being asked questions where they haven't learned it yet?
Yeah, let's try to connect, Julie, so I can try to flesh out how we could pull something like that together.
I mean, we have that data for math, and the unit assessment, right?
Well, with Bridges you do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and the primary grades, we do like foundation.
And then part of it, so you guys are generating report cards for everybody, and we're saying like,
Yeah, I think
this student has proficient and the student doesn't. So if
I
you
also
just
think
see
it's
percentage-
failure rates at the high school. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that'd be useful as well. But yeah, I mean, it would
No,
be
as
interesting.
we're getting stronger and stronger with EduClimber, I think those type of reports are going to be easier and easier for us to be able to generate. And we're moving to a new SIS system next year, Alma. And one of the things that I'm really pleased about it is it will allow us to take your cohorts and say, this proficiency has been taught. How are your students doing? How many of them met the benchmark? How many didn't?
Yeah.
With a click of the mouse. Within Alma. So I actually think what you're describing, Julie, is going to be way easier for us now that we're moving to Alma for next year to be able to generate those type of reports. With our old web school right now, that is a person counting like beans, but next year it won't be.
Okay, unless there's anything else we need to, Tara?
My report is just going over what's happened in the business office during the month of February. Obviously, we're gearing up and getting ready for our 3 or 4 annual meetings that happen at the end of next week, beginning of the following week. And then I'll answer any questions. It's budget season. That's my word.
Yeah. All right, policy committee, policy C8, possible action. This is the people privacy rights policy. We've had readings
This is
on
our
this at this
third
point.
reading.
Third reading.
So,
Supervision.
I would entertain a motion to approve policy C8.
I motion to approve policy C8, pupil privacy rights.
I'll second.
Any discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Nancy?
Aye.
Julie?
Sure, said.
No, she gets to say it again. Peggy, what's your vote?
Aye.
There we go. Sorry, we have to do the roll call vote for hybrid meetings. That's the rule. So, yeah. Other than for the agenda stuff. we do the roll call votes, I guess. They're not agenda, they're minutes. That we do. All right, policy is, okay, discussion items. We have Theo here who wanted to present something to the board. It was originally on 9.4, would people be okay moving it up so that he can say his piece and then not have to stick around for everything? All right.
Great.
Then
Thanks for listening to me here. So, I was thinking that he might be enjoying it. It was like bringing him back to the old days.
So I'll just do a quick introduction here.
Sorry.
This is,
It did have a few memories, different carpet in here now.
yeah.
So,
Theo, was on the board for many years from South Roden and was on the one of the presidents of the VSBA for a number of years as well. And so he worked on getting some legislation through about how supervisory union representation can happen. Anyway, so I'll let him take it from you.
yeah. So thanks for that intro there, Andrew. So when I was very active in the unifying our two districts, and I'm really glad to hear that's kind of confirmed what I was suspecting, that it's really going well, and it's not just, it wasn't a forced marriage, it was a good marriage. And one of the outgrowths of this in the SU is we unified, went from 6 votes in the SU down to 3. Stratford didn't unify with anybody, continued with 3 votes. So basically Stratford got rewarded with more power in the SU. And so I had this board, the previous board of this, do a resolution. I took it to VSBA. I was still a past president. We got it passed at the VSBA level. And then they changed the state law. And now all you have to do is petition the state. Before it took a unanimous vote, not a unanimous vote, but it took a majority vote of the SU to go to the state board and say, we want to change things. Now you guys can just do it on your own. So last year I approached Andrew and said, I'd like to see this happen. Andrew made some progress with it. I guess it was talked about at the SU, which I was gratified to see, but nothing happened. And I just want to stress to you that it is a power play. Of course it's a power play. It's a power play by me to try to get us more representation. And it's a power play by them to not give us the representation. So anybody who says this is about, oh, well, we're towns and we all need the same vote, that's not what this is about. In Vermont in the 1960s, each town in the state had 1 representative. Hancock, 300 people, 1 rep. Burlington, 40,000 people, 1 rep. That makes no sense. They weren't going to change it. It took a court order for that to change. Because the small towns were like, no, we got this. This is a power play. So right now, if you just break it down by students, Stratford has, for each board member they have at the SU level, there's 42 students. We are at 208, 5 times more students per representative. So that doesn't make any sense. And I think we can all see that. The other thing I'll say is, Andrew said that everybody's playing nice in the sandbox at the SU level, and I'm sure that's true. And when I was served on the executive committee of the SU for, I can't even tell you how many years I was on that. But when I started, we were very balkanized. at the SU level. And that's when had the smaller SUs, Chelsea, Tunbridge, Stratford, us, and Sharon. Thank you. And nobody got along. Royalton wanted to leave, and we started meeting to the executive committee, and actually we started warning our meetings for 99 Rainbow Street. I don't know if anybody knows where that is. It's Crossroads. And we meet at Crossroads and have a few beers. No action will be taken, no agenda, general discussion. And we started unifying. And before the state made us negotiate together, we were already negotiating together. Before the state made us do special ed together, we were doing that. So the work we had done 10 years ago, Jamie says, is paying off. I was glad to hear that as well. I mentioned this because we're all getting along, things are going great. And then the sending towns find out that I'm up there in the legislature pushing for private schools to be held to the same standards as public schools. Sharon Academy at that time was very exclusive about the students they took. You couldn't have imagined the reaction going any faster. The superintendent was also with me on this. They basically, in essence, threatened to fire the superintendent. The choice schools did in our district. And I was the vice chair of the SU, and I was out, just like that. So even though everybody's playing nice in the sandbox, it isn't going to be that way. And especially when you look at what's going on now, the governor is proposing an expansion of choice, not a decrease of choice. And I think most of us sitting in this room don't want expanded choice. We don't want our students to be able to go to Sharon Academy or Hartford to play football or Woodstock. If they want to do that, they can pay their own money and go there. But we need these kids. So I would encourage you to think about this before it gets out of hand in terms of as soon as I guess Tunbridge is talking about designating us. That's great. I also heard that same talk 10, 12 years ago. This isn't anything new. When they have budgetary pressures, they talk about it. As soon as the pressures are off, it goes away. So that's my piece. I told Andrew that my ace in the hole on this is I could always go to town meeting. I could always cause a stink and make the public put pressure on you guys to make you do something. I don't want to do that. So that's my piece. I guess I'd be interested in reactions.
How would you suggest that we go about it? Like, would it be that we would say to Stratford, instead of having 3 reps, you would go down to 1, so that we would stay at 3 as being the largest district, and the others would go down to 1 based on how many students they have? Would that, or I mean, we're only 6 people here. Do we really want to change it so that we have 4 or 5 and they have 3? I mean,
I no longer have the math for it. I had it all figured out at one point in time. But you could do the math a lot of different ways. I'm not strictly saying because we have 39% of the kids, we should have 39% of the vote. 35%. I mean, we're cutting hairs there. I don't really care. It's just the inequities are so glaring. Something needs to be done.
but I'm thinking too that even if we did have the higher representation, the choice towns could gang up on us. I mean, we're never going to have more than they've got collectively.
Perfect example of why we should do it.
Yeah.
Why are they afraid of it then? Because it's a power move.
Yeah.
It's a power move on our part, get it? Power move on their part by not giving it to us. But we were all playing nice when we were doing the unification stuff, and then we all kept talking about, hey, let's bring this up, let's talk about this, let's talk about it. We'll talk about it later, talk about it later, talk about it later. When the time came to talk about it, Andrew, you said you were there when we were talking about it, and basically just said, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to keep it right where it is. Totally unfair.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways you can skin this cat, and then you could also just throw it to the state board, and the state board will decide. And I guarantee the state board, because it's in the state law, proportionality is a big part of this, and they'll do something. All we have to do is throw it to them. I'd like to play nice in the sandbox too. Just go to them and say, look, come on, do what's fair here.
Yeah.
They're not doing what's fair.
I generally agree. I do think that, you are putting kind of emphasizing or playing nice in the sandbox. I don't think that is something just to like throw away. One of the things that I really appreciated, and I've told you this as well earlier, is that the other districts in our SU have really been helping us as a district. Like, it feels like we're getting people support from the administrations in the other districts towards doing joint activities with us and doing things that make it more likely for students to join our school. And if we can, again, like I'm encouraging the board to, after I'm off, to really hammer on the joining together as designated towns. Like, I really do think that there's an opportunity here that's greater than, like, the fiscal pressures are greater than what they have been in the past. The disparity between what we're charging and what other towns are charging is a lot greater than it has been in the past. So I think if there is an opportunity to get a choice designation, like, now is the time to strike. So, I think there is value in the playing together nicely thing beyond, just kind of the raw power thing. So that's one of the things I would say. We always do have this ace in our back pocket where we can play this card anytime we want. So if at some point things do break down and we're going to have a good relationship and we need those extra votes, then we can basically do that at any time. Although, of course, it would take a while to actually get before the board and something that happen. So there's the timing thing. I'm going to be off the board after this meeting or annual meeting, so it's kind of going to be other people who are going to be carrying this on going forward. But I in my mind, I think what makes most sense is to focus on the approaching the other districts for designation at this time. One of the things that we did have a lot of discussion on this in the policy committee meetings, and then it came before the full board. In the policy committee, we had advanced plan where basically unified districts would, any unified district regardless of size would get an extra representative, and non-unified districts have. So unified districts would get 4 and non-unified would get 3. So that would not really fully address the disparity, but would be a step at least. When it came before the full board, that wound up getting basically voted down, or the discussion went against that. So that was frustrating from my point of view, and I kind of agree that if it is a bit unreasonable that they're acting as if this is, like something that if we were given the extra vote, that somehow that would be a problem for the other districts or something. So I agree on that front. But one of the things that we did add to the bylaws was that we would revise them, or not revise
Review
them,
them annually.
review them annually. So this discussion on board representation can be brought up again when that happens. And I think it should be, because I think it's worth pointing out the situation. But like what we were just talking about during his Jamie's thing about our merger worked partly because our towns chose it, and while there was definitely hard feelings in places and a lot of conflict, like in the end we came together and we did the merger voluntarily, and it's much different than when you're feeling forced into something as far as what the results wind up being in the end. So that's one of the reasons I'm a little hesitant about, going to the state board and just saying, let's force this, because, I think that might have adverse consequences. Anyway, I'd be interested to hear what other people think about the situation.
I'm curious, and I don't really have an agenda with the question, but what is the flex or the possible flex that a Stratford or a First Branch could have? Like, when I interact with my peers on the other boards, we don't have a lot of disagreement. So and I understand that, theoretically, it's a power play. They have more power, we have less. But everybody seems to be unified in their goals right now. So why fight a fight that's not really a fight at this point? Everybody seems to be in unison with getting the SU to be better. Like, has there been something that I'm not thinking of recently where Stratford or First Branch or one of the smallers has been in direct opposition to what we wanted or needed?
That's a very good question. So I probably spent 11 years on the supervisory union board, most of those as on the executive committee. So I've been to many of those meetings. Most of the votes were, you might have one or two people who voted no to a budget or something, and they were from any particular town. That there was no pattern to it. The one issue that when it comes up generates a lot is the whole choice issue. That's the 500-pound gorilla in the room.
And it will come up.
Yes, it will. And it's the governor's forcing the hand of this to come up. So that will divide the room. And I still think, and I think there's a chance that some people, even in choice towns on an SU board, might say, this isn't right. That we're funding private schools that openly discriminate and not take trans and gay kids. That's not right, and we can't allow this to happen. So I think there's a chance of that, but it's also just a fundamental tenet of democracy, proportional representation. Even if we're all playing nice at every point in time, it's still a fundamental tenet. So even if Burlington got along great with Granville and they all saw things eye to eye, it's still not fair. But yes, I think 99% of the time everything's fine. But once choice comes up, we used to say that Sharon Academy had more votes on the SU board than we did. And they did, because when Sharon Academy wanted to push something, they pushed it, and we felt it. Now, Sharon Academy's kind of changed, I think, how they're operating, so I don't think they're quite as exclusive as they were.
So given how far we're into the tenure of the unification and the fact that the governor may be upsetting the entire apple cart very soon, why would we want to fight this fight right this moment when everything's going well and things are about to change out of our control anyway?
Things might change, but
well, if nothing else, would it be prudent to wait until the climate has settled and we find out if the governor is just going to flip the table before we try to start a contentious process with the other districts?
I mean, that's a very reasonable thought, and I think given what Andrew said about the hope of designation, what you just said, I can see an argument to be made for let's hold off on this. It's not going to upset the apple cart because they don't have a choice. It's not. You don't have to negotiate. You can try to negotiate with them, but ultimately you just bring it to the state board. The state board will decide. And there's no way the state board's going to look at this and say, "Oh, yeah, you guys can all live with just 3 votes." But that's.
But even worse, what if, let's say, we've got a year and a half until the governor does whatever he does, and let's say we get that done and we move quickly, and we get in 6 months, we still have 1 year where there's going to be ill will, and then everything's going to change, and I see what you're saying, and I absolutely agree that, you know, proportional democracy is the highest, but right now we're working in almost a senatorial paradigm rather than a representative, and it's not the ultimate, but it's working for now. So I guess my question isn't prove to me what you're saying, because I believe what you're saying. I guess my question is prove to me that right this moment is the time to take this on.
And I can. I don't think I can right now.
Okay.
So maybe what I would say is maybe this isn't the time, but there will be a time.
But I want to tell you, I'm pretty much in full agreement with what you're saying.
If the governor's plan doesn't turn out to be looking like this, and we're sort of back into the system, I'll be back. Because I think it's to say every time, we just don't want to upset the apple cart. At some point, you have to knock it over. So at some point, so the Burlington sued the state and said, you have to give us more representation. And yeah, that made people in Granville and Hancock and everybody else in the state pissed off, because look at the power Chittenden County has. But they also have 25% of the people in the state live up there. So they should have 25% of the voting power, 30%. That's how it works. Anyway, I'm willing to back off for now, but I'm not going away. As I think most of you know, I'm anything but not persistent.
Go ahead, Julie. You're muted.
No audio, Julie.
I knew that. So I don't go to the big meetings with the other board members, but I was curious to see, for those of you who do, because we have a high school, do you feel like they're voting on things that affect kind of just our high school a lot, or do things in general not high school specific enough that you could argue that way as well? Well, we have a high school as well, so we're voting on things, you know, they're voting on things that they may or may not even send kids to.
I've only been going to the larger meetings for this past year, and I haven't felt as though there's been anything that affected the high school.
And what I would say is what's changed, I feel, in the time that I've been here is we have people on some of the other boards that are actually like strong advocates for our high school. So on the Rochester Stockbridge district board, like one of the people who comes to the SU board very often, like one of his goals is to really strengthen our high school because he sees it as the flagship high school of the supervisory union. And I feel like that is a more common view than it was in the past. You know, I think when each of these districts had their own high school, we were a competitor. And so, you know, like people didn't want to give us more power because like it's a rival high school, whereas now we are the SU's high school. And so, you know, I think people see the value in supporting that and yeah, I'm behind that. And the other thing I would kind of put out as, you know, I agree that there may be at some point in time when it's needed to upset the apple cart or something, but what's kind of more important to me, or what I see as, you know, there's, when you have different people on the different boards and different people representing the different boards on the SU, it's more important having people who are kind of competent and invested and really putting the time and effort in. And I'm not as concerned with where those people come from as like that those people are on the board, you know? So like, as I said, we have somebody from Rochester who's been a really strong advocate, and it makes good points and like is energetic and puts a lot of time in at the SU board meetings and everything else. And having somebody like that on the board, even if he's from another town, is really useful. You know, right now, like if we went to 5 representatives, like we don't even have somebody running for the seat in our board right now. So
we struggle to get a quorum as it is.
Right. So what I'm trying to get at is like, you know, if the change would be to knock some of these other districts' representatives down and we lose some of the people who are putting energy and effort into the board, that I think would actually be a net negative. You know, as long as we're all working together towards a common goal.
Chances are those people aren't the ones who will lose their board seat, because their boards recognize who's putting in the time.
True.
And I imagine you still have that, as long as you have, years ago, because we had trouble getting quorums as well at the full board level. So we said if you had a quorum of the executive committee.
No, they removed the executive committee.
Yeah, we're having a much easier
So
time getting quorums.
I might suggest, because that's what we did, is we said as long as you had the executive committee there, we function like the full board. You guys hear that?
This has helped.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, that's another way of
No,
being here.
we would be in that same place.
Yeah.
if-
That's why you were able to get away.
I'm saying that's how we were able to get away
Got it.
from
Got it. But it's that issue, some issue's going to come up, and then you're gonna sit there and say, damn it. And it's gonna be too late. And it's probably gonna be around choice somehow. That's because that's the big divisive issue, is you got some districts promoting choice and other districts not. And that's always gonna be a wedge issue. Anyway, I've taken up enough of your time.
Yes, thank you.
I'm not gonna forget about it for now. I'm gonna go with your suggestion of I'll be quiet. We'll see what happens. But I will be back next year. If, you know, I think if things warrant it. But thanks for your time. I really appreciate you thinking about it.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, 9.1, legislative updates, including governor's proposal on education.
So, I'm happy to try to answer any question folks may have. I think you've been following it closely. A bunch of you were on the full board meeting last night where we discussed this. I mean, the piece that came out that the full board's looking to address through board chairs and myself is that I was concerned in regards to the VSA's policy around 2,000 to 4,000 student unified districts, which as an SU, we wouldn't meet that 2,000 student threshold.
Yeah.
And minimum 300 student elementary schools. And so as a district, if you were to combine your two elementary schools, you can meet that threshold. But then they,
Not even, we're at 250 or something like that.
well, yeah, you wouldn't be quite 300. My hope is
You'd be pretty
yeah,
close.
you'd be close. But then you start to look at some of the suggestions around high school numbers and things of that nature. And it's just, my concern with the policy approach is that if you were to do the research in regards to the current unified districts in the state, it felt very much so as a policy proposal to appease Chittenden County. To just call a spade a spade. So that is my concern, because there'd be no changes in Chittenden County if you look at the numbers. And so several superintendents that serve supervisory.
Got the bigger district, got more votes.
That serve supervisory unions have, well, yes, I'm concerned about that. If you look at the current makeup of the VSA trustees, that they're mostly made up of larger districts and not superintendents of supervisory unions. And so we have raised some alarm around there really ought to be a mechanism to get feedback from all stakeholders. And I would say also included is the VSBA, and needing to make certain you all had an opportunity to know there was going to be a vote on proposing essentially forcing a merger of your district. Not even just necessarily with your neighbor, you, but bigger than that, because that's what was proposed. And my concern that I continue to have about this proposal is that I think there are some folks in the legislature who were supporters of Act 46 who really wanted a bigger bite of the apple but wasn't able to get it at that time, that are going to lean on to this proposal and say, look, the educational experts and leaders are saying this is what we should And so do know that we're working on getting a letter out to raise these concerns and ask that the VSBA and VSA look to walk back and back up their policy statements with better research than the nuanced research. If you start to look at what I sent you guys, it contradicts itself at times in regards to the research. And so that's just a concern. The other thing is specifically to the work that we've been doing as a supervisory union that I think is really starting to pay dividends in regards to our community school efforts. Being visible and connecting with communities and having community partners and trying to get more support to your buildings. I think we're starting to really get some momentum there. And I'm really concerned in regards to the conversations that are being had really solely focused on dollar figures. And I haven't seen anything in this proposal that says it's going to actually create better outcomes for kids. And so I think that those are some of the things we need to be really flagging as well. So just know that next week during vacation, I'm going to try to be as available to testify and to be as available to be in Montpelier to just share those concerns. And, in general, I want to speak to the good work that you have going in your district. I think that, Andrew, I really appreciate me being able to highlight this idea that there was a process and that there was a choice involved. It wasn't forced, and be able to differentiate for folks the difference of that. So thank you for adding that. The other thing that I do remain concerned about, because your district in general, you have really good participation in regards to food service. Like your numbers are up significantly in the last 3 years. And I think a lot of our students were relying on universal meals and the ability to make certain that they are having meals at school. During school, but also during the summer, during your programming during the summer, and snacks during your after-school programming and things of that nature. So I am concerned about universal meals and that going away and what that could mean in regards to our ability locally to support making certain our kids eat. Because you know how this plays. Like, you're not going to tell me because the family doesn't have the means to pay because their family's going paycheck to paycheck. I cannot imagine you as a board saying, Jamie, you can only feed that student a cheese sandwich. And if you did, I would say that doesn't align to the work we've been doing, right? But that's where this is going to fall back to if we lose universal meals, is we're going to incur locally debt because of it, which is what was happening.
Is that for a dramatic effect, what you just said?
What's that?
That alternate lunch, it's like a cheese sandwich?
I'm not going to do that, but there are districts
No,
that
but
do that.
that is a real.
That happens.
It does happen.
Peanut butter sandwich or something, that's it.
From the parents' perspective, the universal school meals does wonders for the morning routine. They're always going to have an option.
So yeah, I don't want to go on and on about it, but those are just some of the things. But a lot in general, I want to keep emphasizing this universal meals because I don't want it to be lost. And it's that thing that kind of happens and happen at the 11th hour, and all of a sudden it's July 1, and people are like, what? Universal meals is on the table. So I just want you to all know that yes, it is on the table.
Yeah, it does. It's one of those things where it doesn't actually save. It's just shifting money from one place to another.
Needs to be off the table now.
The other thing that you highlight is like looking at our district, and I assume the supervisor more broadly, like, we're not the problem here. Like,
We're not the problem.
Like, I did that math of like, if you look at our budget over the last, since FY17, like, we wouldn't have a problem if the state ed fund if they had grown at the same rate we had. So it's not us that's causing the problem. So
No, and frankly, if you look at our spending, even for our smaller school districts in our SU, that's not the problem. Actually, it's what you're speaking to. It's other districts' spending being passed on to them through school choices, and also why I think that we do have an opportune time to approach them about designation, because our boards are becoming more and more educated. Like, school choice is increasing at such a rate. Like, they have to do something because they can't, otherwise they're gonna gut their elementary schools.
Yeah, and the other thing is like, all of these issues are kind of reactions to other bigger issues with the state, like the healthcare costs, and also just declining population. Like, that's not a problem with the schools, that's an issue with the state demographics generally, and so like we work on solving that. Whatever. Anyway, I think we're all on the same page on those fronts.
I would just say, if they're gonna make it go to a district, I'd be supportive of RSU just becoming a district. And, I mean, we'll probably- but,
Make your job easier.
I didn't say anything, I'm superintendent of an SU. Fine.
Yeah, but I don't know.
It's a good argument, seeing as we know how to run our district, so, and we know how to run our SU, so
Well,
maybe
I
just
would
let us
support
keep
a run
running
at
it.
that, a suggestion of that.
Right, but
And,
you know, what the proposal was of the 5 districts, that's just way too large.
Yeah, but I think RSU would make a decent district. Because we do get along pretty good.
Yeah.
And we're very like-sized and minded towns.
Let's talk about the representation.
Yep.
Okay, anything else on that, or can we move to the Rural School Community Alliance? Okay, Rural School Community Alliance. Want to speak to this as well?
Yeah, just the SU board was approached in the member districts from the Community Alliance, mostly in regards to trying to just make certain that supervisory unions, and in general, if you look at a map, right, supervisory unions currently are constructed in a way that they tend to still be supporting rural districts, right, smaller rural districts after the Act 46 mergers. And I will say, really acknowledging specifically from the North Country Supervisory Union, I think was where this came from, was that concerns around and probably some foresight around how are we going to ensure that those smaller districts in the state and supervisory unions have a voice to advocate in regards to policy in light of the governor's proposal. And made some sense to me in regards to specific the community school work that we've been doing. And Jess DeCarlos, who was at the Agency of Ed in the Pathways Division that really supported us with the Community Schools Grant, was actually our keynote speaker for the opening in service, is now working up in the Northeast Kingdom for the Vermont Rural Education Collaborative, VREC, which is serving as a professional development organization, things of that nature. That's the nonprofit that they discussed in regards to last night at the SU board. Broken off of that is this idea of like, we ought to have a way for rural districts to share resources in regards to their local representatives and things in regards to what their concerns are about a 5-district proposal. And so what this organization is doing is essentially going to organize some policy for them to consider. It did just introduce in the law, as an example, though, they were able to get a representative for Bill H-180, which would say they provide protections for elementary schools being closed, that there at least should be a process that a district needs to go through before they just unilaterally close an elementary school. And you would say like, okay, well, that's if the governor's proposal happens. And I would say, no, you guys have articles of agreement that really protect your 2 elementary schools around that town having a voice to close it. A good example here locally where there wasn't protections, and after the incentives around the merger went away, was Montpelier Roxbury closed Roxbury. They had some budget difficulties in Montpelier, and they closed the smaller elementary school. They saved $1.2 million, they'll tell you that. But there wasn't any opportunity for Roxbury to weigh in. And the concern that I have around those type of unilateral decisions are, without processes to have those conversations, is is for that town of Roxbury, what family is going to move there now when they have to have their kids ride a bus for 45 minutes? Now, you could say that was a bad merger. Roxbury should have thought of that. They should have got more protections, but they didn't. And if I'm a parent now, my kid has to go to Union Elementary, Montpelier, I guess I'm going to move into Montpelier because I don't want my kid to go 45 minutes on a bus to Montpelier. So I do think that's an example of this group putting in some legislation that I think, even though a district emerged, like, could benefit some rural towns. So yeah, that's the reason why. Again, it's really about a think tank. It's really about sharing resources. I must say they've been really good, Andrew. I think you're getting emails trying to keep up to speed on what's actually going on, which I am not on their email list. I don't get them. They're very focused on the boards, which I appreciate. The board members have been forwarding it to me, which I have found helpful, just trying to keep up to speed on stuff. So that's the thing.
So the possible action will be whether we decide as a board to join this group or not. So, you know, I do think that their current approach of, you know, going against the proposed governor's plan of, you know, the 5 districts and things like that does align with where we're, at least my thoughts are. My one hesitation with this group, and I expressed this last night, was that a lot of the same people who are involved in this group were involved during the merger process, kind of working against the merger Act 46 side of things. And so, you know, I remember some of the same people from that process. And, you know, we as a district, I really think, did benefit from that merger. And, you know, I remember there being them supporting kind of the people who were fighting against our merger. And so in that case, they were kind of like at cross purposes. But in this case, I think we're in alignment. So it's more, you know, I'm a little bit, have a few hesitations just on that front of, you know, are we joining where they are aligned with us currently, but might be down the road, is my one hesitation. But, so I'm open to hear what everybody else thinks.
Jamie, you said everybody has already voted yes?
In the SU.
In the SU?
Yeah. Granville Hancock's going to type it up this next meeting, but expect them to.
I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem for the sake of what we want to get achieved, getting in, being bedfellows with somebody that previously was against unification. I mean, priorities change. So that wouldn't make me want to vote against it, as long as we've assured that their goal is our goal and that there's not some strange caveat. So I like it, unless there's some weird caveat that I was unaware of, other than some of these people were against what we were for previously. I'm perfectly willing to fight alongside them this time.
Go ahead, Julie.
And just so you know, oh, sorry. When we voted on it last night, I abstained from the vote because I wasn't sure about it. So, and I probably will again.
Okay. Go ahead, Julie.
I just wondered what it meant to be involved in it. What does it mean asking us to do? How will they collaborate with us? So what is it? What is our responsibility, and what collaboration do we actually have with them?
So you'll get tonight to choose a member that will be the active communicator with them. And it's really, they're gonna say, like, what are your thoughts around different ideas in regards to possible alternative proposals or policy, Julie?
And it's kind of a lobbying group as well, in that they'll go and say, you know, the Rural Community Alliance is pushing for this, and this is who we represent, and our name will be on there. This is the White River Unified District Board. That's a member of this group. if we join, then we're co-signing what they're advocating.
But you can always back out too.
Oh,
If it starts going in a direction that you don't like, you can just say,
Exactly.
hey, you know what?
Oh, yeah.
We're out.
Rescind that membership.
But so the SU board voted on this last night?
Yep.
Okay.
And that too, that's a good point. If this starts going in a way that we're not comfortable with, we can just be like, we're no longer.
Yeah, and this way we also have a voice in like what direction they may go. Like, with the letter that the SU put out, that we put together as the SU and sent out, the initial draft, like when they sent it to me, I wasn't really comfortable signing on to it because it was saying basically like that mergers didn't save us any money. And I was like, well, our district did save some money. Changed it to that some of the mergers didn't save money. And so like by being part of the process, we're able to change the messaging. So,
Are you looking to act or are we waiting?
I think we are looking to act.
Motion to approve the Rural School Community Alliance membership for the White River Unified District and to sign on to their alliance.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this motion? Do a roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Rodney?
I'm going to abstain. I'm not really against it, but I'm not really for it. And I'm not going to be here next year.
Go ahead,
Aye.
Nancy. Julie?
Aye.
I'll say aye.
Okay, and the motion passes. Okay, then we also need somebody to be the representative. I would say probably not Rodney or I, since we are not going to be here. So who would be interested? You get a lot of emails. And yeah, that's good so far.
I mean,
I'm not opposed to doing it. But what about Julie or Peggy? Are either of you interested in doing that?
I'd be interested in being like a co-representative, but sometimes I get behind in emails or, if school's really busy. I just hesitate about the time commitment if it's like a quick decision that needs to be made.
I'm sure we could get more people
Yes,
on the email.
I think they're fine with that.
Yeah. So, yeah. We can also probably get everybody to get the emails if you want, and then whoever we.
I don't have a problem getting the emails.
Yeah.
I just don't know if.
Well, like if we had the one representative, then it's the same sort of thing as with the SU board, like say
Oh,
anytime.
yeah.
There's going to meeting, which you're.
I'm comfortable with that.
So, Julie, do you want to be the representative or Nancy? You guys want to fight it out?
Well, how about, oh, wait, Peggy was going to say something.
Well, I was going to say at this point in my life, I don't want to commit to any committee yet until after I get officially moved. But maybe this is something that we should take up when we reorganize and we have our new board members.
Yeah.
That's a good point, but things are moving relatively quickly on that front as well, so we probably should have somebody
In the interim.
in there.
We'd have to reappoint somebody anyway.
Reappoint somebody in a month.
Next month.
So who wants to do it for a month?
Who wants to do it for a month?
Sure.
All right,
Why not?
who wants to nominate you?
I nominate Nancy to be the representative for the Rural School Community Alliance.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? On that, so that'd be both.
Aye.
Ed, Rodney,
Aye.
Aye.
Nancy, Julie?
Aye.
All right, moving on. Interview.
Nope.
Oh,
9-3, are you good?
Oh, yeah, 9-3, final details for and bond information. So, yeah, so for the final meeting details, we'll probably do the same presentation at that meeting that we did basically here, adding some celebrations from the principals, like we usually have that. The principals and administration do a little intro. I'm going to be driving from the airport directly up, and I'm hoping to be there on time, but if I am not, we might need somebody to step in to do the budget portion of things.
I am also going to be, actually, I'm supposed to be home by noon time.
Okay. I'm supposed to be home by like 5. Okay, well,
Guys are making me nervous.
all right.
They come. That's what they say.
So,
Tara will be here, it
Okay.
sounds like.
Okay.
Sharon tonight,
I
felt like.
talked with Sharon tonight. We've got a backup plan if I can't get there and I need to be here.
I mean, I'm willing to help out where I can when it comes to that.
so my only other thoughts with the annual meeting and bond informational meeting would be trying to, like, we're gonna have childcare, but I was thinking of coming up with ways of trying to draw people out a little more. And one of the things we could do is try and make it more of an event that for whoever the childcare will be. So, movie night or
It's a good idea.
something like that, so that families are motivated to come out for more than just like, come out and you can dump your kids over here. So I think the PTO, I had a little bit of discussion with them about whether, they might be willing to support and help in any way. So I guess if people are on board, I can basically task them with coming up with something fun.
Yeah.
Great idea.
The other suggestion, and I don't know if this is really possible because the fact that kids are off school, but like if we could get kids involved in the annual meeting itself, running microphones, or if there was, or just wanted to do something, or
I think as far as running microphone, Mary Shell's already thought about using possibly your ambassadors here.
I don't have firm details on that, but it's one of the many things we looked at. Expanding role.
Yeah.
Well, even the pep band might want to play.
Yeah, the jazz band or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking just especially because the bond vote is going to be
Yeah,
discussed that
yeah.
night.
yeah, I mean, I think the more that we could get students involved, that would also draw people who come
Yeah.
along with the students. With that,
Those
we don't-
acoustics don't sound good.
Make it like mind blowing. I mean, eardrum blowing.
Caveat would be, extend the duration of the
No, I'm thinking the band could play as people are getting ready to sit down, possibly before we even open. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna feed folks and then be a little,
I like that, yeah.
I mean, Jeff, if you're retiring, let's go out with a bang. Let's get a new annual tradition going.
Yeah.
Well, if it's gonna be like that, let's see if they can move the beer hall from Tunbridge Fairgrounds to those.
Burn it down.
Okay.
Throw a check on time button.
Does anybody else have any thoughts? I'll reach out to the PTO about what they can do for something fun for the.
Should I call Noah Khan for that night?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
Did you know that he's Matt Benoit's first cousin?
Really?
Yes, one of our Woodstock kids. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He's
Oh,
first
yeah, he
cousins
went
with
to
them.
Newton Elementary
Yeah,
too.
Yeah,
There
and
you go.
they go to all his concerts. He gives them tickets to everything. Yeah.
All right, moving on to the interview with WRVHS principal finalists, Shana.
Yeah, so I can just quickly introduce Shane. I think everyone here, for the most part, yes, because Julie would know Shane now in regards to the interview process. So Shane Oakes is currently our coordinator of student support, has served at the elementary level, and has served at the high school for the last 3 years in that role. Also served as our COVID-19 coordinator for the supervisory union when we were navigating COVID-19, and is currently in the role of our Title IX coordinator at the supervisory union as well. So Shane's wore quite a few hats, but then also was a director at the East Valley Academy, where I first met him when I was a principal at Williamstown. Actually, we had crossed paths. So it's my pleasure to introduce Shane Oakes after, like I said, a really deep and strong candidate pool, a really thorough principal search process. And, you know, I'm feedback from all your stakeholders is really important to me when I go to make a decision in regards to a recommendation to the board for a hire. And I'll say that, you know, in regards to feedback across stakeholders for Shane, it came really through how much your students and your staff really value Mr. Oakes in regards to being here at the high school in his role currently, and really could see him serving as your principal moving forward. So it became clear through the interview process, my work with Shane, but also I just wanted you to know the feedback was really glowing in regards to folks feeling good about Shane moving forward as your finalist for consideration tonight. So I know you each you've come up as a board with some questions. I try to assign them so each member had a question they could ask. I'll turn it over to all of you.
Okay. I've got the first question. So Jeff has done a great job building the Wildcat community at the high school. How will you maintain and continue this momentum?
Well, I think first and foremost, Jeff absolutely has done a great job of being chief cheerleader and really, I think, getting out there and being the face of White River Valley and what it means to be a Wildcat. And so it really would be about continuing that tradition. A lot of the things that we've done and created that make White River Valley unique and special really comes down, I think, to the community itself, though. Our schools are representative of our communities, and it really is that energy, that engagement, that passion and commitment for students that makes me love my job, wants me why I want to be here in this position. And I'm just excited about the opportunity to continue to build and grow. I think, as Mr. Canarney alluded to, I do have a great deal of trust that's already been established and built with students and staff and a lot of family members. And I think that trust serves as the foundation for the work that I'll do. And if you ask folks that know me, that work with me, I think you'll hear that I'm thoughtful, curious, ask a lot of questions, seek to understand others. And I think when you approach leadership with that fashion, that mindset, it really puts people at ease. It brings people to the table, and we just get to rolling up our sleeves and doing the work. And that's how I envision this transition playing out, if that's the decision of the board.
Thank you.
Having worked in our district, what ideas do you have on things we can improve or do better?
Yeah, going back to data again, some of the questions and feedback through the survey data around what the values of a principal were, attributes, things like that. I think there's some concern around safety, discipline, accountability that were common themes. I don't think that's necessarily surprising given the environment that we're in right now, not just as a school, but in general, the tenor of communication and relationships and the influence of social media and things on our culture plays a big part in that. But students, parents, families expect their leaders to do that job too. And so I know that's something that I'm pay attention to and aware of. We've been trying to identify what are little things that we can do within the school to improve in those areas. I'm really proud of the work that we've done as a PBIS school that was referenced earlier in Principal Bowen's report, but really focusing on systems that support positive behavior within the school. We've developed a lot of rituals and customs as well that kind of support that work, are the underpinning of it. But looking at things like how we're utilizing our time, the schedule itself, utilizing resources within the school as effectively as possible, and kind of recognizing when maybe you have the right tool, but it doesn't happen to be available at the time you need to use that tool is a problem. And so when we plan a little bit better, we can anticipate some of those challenges and structure resources in a way that are available for students. So,
thank you.
Hi, Shane. In the stakeholder feedback, teacher retention is a priority for the next principal. What ideas do you have to retain and attract teachers?
Yeah, it's critically important. I think it's the number one job of a principal is really to support the teachers. And I look at that as kind of a big part of what this transition will be, going from serving students directly day in, day out to serving teachers, because I think that's where a principal can have their greatest impact on influencing, supporting the teachers to be their best selves and show up that way in the classroom every day. So I look forward to those individual conversations, the classroom observations, and really having conversations with folks about what their passions are, what makes them come to this profession in the first place, and how do we continue to let that light kind of shine through their work. And then I think you also need to balance that individual focus with a systems lens and stepping back and looking at the data and understanding what are these trends, what are we seeing in the output of our students, and is that heading in the direction that we want it to go, or do we need to, some flags here that we need to make some changes and address some things. And so balancing those two needs, I think when you do that with good individual supervision, a climate and environment where everyone feels welcome and supported, and then meaningful professional development that really supports teachers in what they're doing, what their passion is. That's the goal. So,
thanks.
I have the next question. You've touched on this a little bit, but I want to go back to accountability. It was an important part of the stakeholder feedback. So what will you do to work on accountability, in particular in terms of student discipline and addressing a growing drug problem and the culture of acceptance?
can you speak to what you mean by the culture of acceptance? I'm not sure I understood that part.
I don't want to elaborate on that because I wasn't part of the people who made the survey. My guess is it's students feeling accepted at school, but I don't really know.
Okay. I think I've thought a lot about this one since going through some of the interviews and hearing the stakeholder feedback. I think one thing that I want to plan with our leadership team and our high school staff, we just looked at our school climate survey data this year within our faculty meeting as part of our data time. And I really want to take some of this data back to students themselves and facilitate conversations within our advisory groups to explore what does accountability look like to them? What do they want to see more of? And really make sure that their voice is represented at that table in this process. And then I think really just spelling out more clearly so that folks kind of know and understand, okay, when a student found with a vape in the bathroom, this is what happens. I think some clarity around things is settling and reassuring to folks. And while I thought that was pretty clear and understood prior to this process, I think hearing some of the feedback shows me that maybe there's not as much clarity or understanding. So just going back to, again, those infractions, the behavioral challenges that we talk about, teach with students, and make sure that everybody understands what happens when you cross that line.
Thank you.
There, I guess I have the next question. And basically, what are your goals for our school? You know, what's your vision in 20 years with the class of 2046? What do you want them to, looking back and saying about their high school principal?
Well, Peggy, I haven't thought 20 years into the future. So that puts me on the spot. You know, again, I just go back to building off of, I think, the momentum of what Jeff has started and what it means to be a Wildcat. And when I walk the halls and when I talk to our students, I think people really feel connected to some aspects of their school. Maybe not everything, but our students do find their place. They find their people. They find things that bring meaning to them outside of the classroom, whether that's a game club, whether it's the band or chorus or drama, you know, all these things. And so, you know, what would I want our students to think about from their high school experience 20 years down the road? I think knowing that there was people in their lives that truly cared about them, that held high expectations and standards, and were there cheering them on, helping them achieve those expectations. That's what I hope they think of.
Thank you.
I didn't have a question.
What questions do you have for us?
Yeah, your question was, what questions do you have for us?
Oh, is that? I guess I should have read my email.
Ronnie, at this point, I don't have any questions, so you're off the hook. You know,
Well, what's your favorite color?
Green and gold.
Green and gold.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Favorite animal? Wildcat.
Anybody have anything else that they've thought of in the interim? Well, thank you very much for coming out and answering our questions. Continue on. So we've got did the two actions, so on to public comment. We have one current public. Any comment you would like?
No, nothing. Thank you.
New hires or resignations? Then I'd entertain a motion to enter executive session.
Move to enter executive session for personnel actions.
Second.
Right in. Jamie.
Oh, and invite in the superintendent.
That's all you need, I think.
Yep.
I move that we come out of executive session.
A second.
All right. Unless there's any objections, we're back into the main session. Do we have a further motion?
Okay, I make a motion that we empower Jamie to negotiate a contract with Shane Oates
Or high school principal.
for high school principal.
I second.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion? Roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Rodney?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Peggy?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes.
Thanks, guys.
That's exciting. All right, we don't have any other.
I just have one.
oh,
I just
go
wanted
ahead.
to, this already happened, but I just wanted as a superintendent to personally thank Rodney and Andrew for just your leadership and commitment and support as board members. From where I sit as a superintendent, it is a real pleasure to work for these boards and you as board members, because I have always felt incredibly supported, would ask the right questions and difficult questions when they need to be asked. And it, you know, as I just was thinking through about COVID and things, like you've always instilled trust in the administration and asked the right questions at the right times, but also provided us the opportunity to do the instructional leadership and allowed us to make mistakes and then correct our mistakes when we made them. And I just want you to know, one of the reasons I really cherish being a superintendent here is by the way the boards supervise and hold me to high standards, and just thanks for being incredibly outstanding board members. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And it's been a pleasure working with all of you.
I can't
Right.
thank you two guys enough. It would have made my first couple of years on the board much, much harder if either of you wasn't around to advise me, so.
All right, well, thanks, everybody.
We'll miss you.
Thanks. Future agenda items? Well, you guys are on your own.
I did hear, I do think we should discuss strategy around approaching boards around designation. We'll have our reorg meeting as well. And I'm sure there'll be legislative updates and discussion around what comes around our annual meeting and bond vote.
Can I add something? I don't know if it will fit into the next meeting, but I'd like to go back to community task force.
Yes,
And look at
Julie,
how
thank
it
you. I just was sharing that report actually with someone the other day, so yes.
Oh, and I don't know if this is adjacent issue-wise, but I guess we have to, we don't have to, but we should discuss, there's some kind of hubbub going all around now with local businesses in town not caring as much for having students come in the afternoon. I guess it has to do with vaping and petty theft. I saw an email, so they're asking them not to go up there when they're waiting for the bus or something. So,
Yeah, we can talk about update around that, sure.
So, need to know what's going on there a little bit.
We're good. That's
Okay.
be a full agenda.
All right, our next meeting date is Monday, March 3rd for the annual meeting at 6 PM. And then the reorg at Tuesday, March 18th, 7 PM at Bethel campus. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, thank you, everybody.